Hey everyone, this is Joseph Anderson, founder and CEO of Connex. Years ago, I watched my mother lose her job after developing carpal tunnel from repetitive data entry work. She had this really painful carpal tunnel surgery and then she was let go. And that moment really stuck with me. I remember thinking that there has to be a better way. And that's what inspired me to create Connex, a tool that automates e-commerce operations and helps businesses eliminate the kind of tedious manual work that burns people out. Today, I'm excited to be joined by someone who's building the kind of automation-first solutions that can change how companies operate at their core. Bryce is the founder of Jidoka, a development shop that specializes in eliminating operational waste through custom-built AI solutions, smart automation, and platform integrations. Whether that means programming entirely new systems or setting up the right third-party tools, Bryce's team focuses on solving problems at the root, not just patching them. Bryce, I want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, great to be here, Joe. Thanks for having me.
So let's kick things off. What led you to start Jidoka? And when I think Jidoka, I think the Toyota from his book about the machines that can kind of run themselves and the stages of automation. How did you find your way into AI automation and this kind of work?
Yeah, I love it, and you're right. You're spot on. So Jidoka is Japanese for automation with human touch, and it is rooted in sort of that lean, eliminating waste kind of philosophy. So Toyota has that over in the manufacturing space, and I figured I'd bring it into the software space as well. And so I do love just kind of the concept of using software to automate processes, but have that touch of human touch to ensure that quality as well. But yeah, to just touch on how did I get started? So probably about a decade ago, going into high school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I had banged around on a computer, building websites, kind of teaching myself how to code. So going into high school, I had known what I wanted to do. I loved the concept and the idea that I could bring anything to life just by writing a few lines of code. And I could make people's lives easier and better and help them win at the same time. So all throughout high school, I had taken all the electives that I could, C++, Java, Python, AP computer science and everything like that. And part of my story is that I was actually take the textbooks home and handwrite the solutions in my notebook and then transfer them into the terminal the next day. And so that kind of led into just the love and the passion that continued to grow. Senior year, I had a gal that was friends with a realtor, and they were looking for somebody to build a website. And who's technical to build a website? My name was given. So I built first Squarespace website for $200. And from there, I kind of taught myself full stack development, building out web apps and mobile apps. In college, I had built an app to teach teens financial literacy that competed with Mint and EveryDollar. And at that same time, that was sort of a B2C build. At the same time, I'd been working my summers at a local shop here in Mass, and there was a tedious process that caught my attention. It was paper time cards to clock in, clock out. They were using pen and paper, and
I remember those when I was in college using those paper time. Man, I used to work at a dining hall, and we have to punch in and punch out, and sometimes the thing wouldn't work. You had to slide it in a certain way.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild. And she would spend hours with a handheld calculator and a pencil and calculate everything for all the employees and then submit it to payroll. And I was like, I spent a weekend creating a tablet app that would allow the employees to clock in, clock out with a push of a button, and it would automatically calculate the time behind the scenes. And then we could, review it and a push of a button, send it to the payroll company. And I offered it to them, and I was like, would this be of interest to you? And they're like, yes, that would save me 2 hours per week times or however long it was. And
so you built some software AI that went through like a spreadsheet of time cards?
So yeah, that's really just it was more just a simple web app that had a database in the background, and then we displayed sort of a time card, a calendar, Monday through Sunday, and they would track their time. So that one wasn't AI enabled at all. It was more just algorithmic and programmatic. But
That's definitely how it's a great start into getting into AI and automation. And speaking of this time card app that you built, how would you describe the kind of work that Jidoka does today, and what types of businesses are best suited to partner with you?
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, that was the first one to get my feet wet and dive right into it. So we are builders of software and systems, right? So we take a look at the time-consuming, repetitive, mundane tasks across all of the core functions of a business: finance, legal, HR, sales, marketing, and operations. And we just figure out, what are the tasks that drain your energy that you dread doing on a Monday? And we take a look at it and we see if we can automate it. And we're not just selling AI or just streamlining processes or eliminating operational waste, which are buzzwords that sound good, but it's more we're helping that mom or dad that's a business owner but also has 5 kids at home, and we give them 15 hours back in their week to allow them to go to their son's soccer games and really spend time with the people that they love and free their time to do what they love. And so we're taking a look at manual processes and we're creating well-oiled machines out of those and just putting a lot of those processes on autopilot. And to answer that, the second piece of that around who do I love to work with the most, it's twofold. The first is, any business with time-consuming tasks, and I've had a lot of success with franchises where we build out a solution for one location or branch, and it gets replicated across the other locations, and the ROI is exceptional. And there's a lot of interest with businesses that have one or more employees already. So they're comfortable with SOPs, already standard operating procedures, and rather than just giving it to an intern, or we now have the possibility that we could give it to AI that has a PhD in every single subject, and now we could train AI with those SOPs and 100x the volume and 100x the results. And a lot of those boomer businesses fall into that category where they've had processes that are manual for decades, and congratulations to them for getting to where they are, and props to them. But in order to take things to that next level and implement that automation, make sure they don't fall short of the competitors as well. In these changing times, a lot of the boomer businesses can jump on that train as well. And then the second piece of that twofold is I partner with a lot of AI consultants that sometimes find their hands tied if they're brokering or recommending existing third-party applications, but they're super cookie cutter and there isn't a lot of customization or integration between platforms. That's where we're able to take that custom software lens to it and be that custom implementer for them.
You get what you pay for. Even in our business, there are lower cost solutions, but you find that they lack customization or depth. And so that's why they're less money. They're built for a smaller business with a very simple workflow. But with the custom, sometimes you just got to go the custom way.
Yeah, exactly. And that runs rampant. If you ask like Zillow to make a change for their software, they won't be able to answer your ticket. But if you have sort of that lifelong relationship, that local feel, and from that custom standpoint, we're able to really tailor that solution as well. And so that's AI consultants, that's IT MSPs, that's web development agencies, marketing agencies, anyone who hears their clients say, well, can you automate this, but they just don't have the horsepower to be able to bring that to completion.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And speaking of bringing things to completion in custom software, you're not a traditional consultancy. You're a development team focused on eliminating waste through automation. Can you talk about how you identify high friction processes and decide whether to build custom tools or implement existing ones?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a discovery call, or I go out for coffee, and I usually bring a lot of my business through an exercise, right? So I say, if you could walk through Monday through Friday and just list the tasks that are tedious, time consuming, repetitive, that you dread doing on a Monday, that keep you at work on a Friday for both you and your team, and write those 10 down. And nice job, pat yourself on the back. And then I typically take it that next level, and I actually encourage, now that you've written those down, now think about the tasks that feel productive because they're dopamine hits, like checking your email for 4 hours a day, but they're not actually moving the needle forward. And I say, list those down, list 1 through 10 there. And then we sit down and we go through those 1 through 20. And then I'll dig into that and I'll say, okay, now you have a process. What does that look like A to Z from start to end? What is that, what is that achieving? What is that getting done? What does that look like? And then we'll try to map it from that standpoint. But that gets us into, help us understand the current as is processes.
Speaking of the processes, I've just started using ChatGPT and I've just started using GitHub Copilot myself for a lot of AI, like even to write code. One of my friends was telling me about Claude. It's an AI powered chat system. What kind of AI platforms do you like to work with and how they help you build smarter solutions.
Yeah. So that is, yep, GitHub Copilot is actually what I originally had started with. And I was balancing that with ChatGPT. And I currently use Cursor IDE, incredibly intuitive. And then you've got the Lovable and the Bolt and the v0.dev that just allow you prompt it saying, hey, I want a dashboard that does XYZ, and it's able to generate a template. One example that I typically go with is straight out of my discovery calls, I have an understanding of what needs to be built. I take that image from my mind and I put it into a chat message and I say, okay, can you build out a minimalistic, sleek dashboard similar to Airbnb that does XYZ with these features, account settings page, account preferences, a contact list, and a dashboard with metrics. And it is able to actually generate a template in seconds rather than having that development take hours. And that's a great place to start. And then we just connect the back end. And we have a fully functioning MVP, a minimum viable product in minutes, over 10x our productivity to be able to pump out these AI first SaaS products that we're building out. And it's truly remarkable. It's a really nice sidekick right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned these AI systems, you can train them on standard operating procedures. And as you know, I'm sure SOPs constantly intimidate the founders. And they think that documenting everything will take forever. I have a developer manual here that's about maybe 300 articles, maybe 150, and it's a little bit overwhelming. How do you approach SOP creation as part of building systems and scaling?
Yeah, and that's the SOPs come first, right? And I would say to those business owners that are seeing that kind of friction there, 6 months from now, time is going to pass anyway. So you're better off implementing those SOPs and have your systems in place ready for, say, an intern to take on in 6 months rather than not. But I encourage business owners to think about both scalability and sellability. Either they're building to scale for generations, and that's the scalability side, or they're building to sell, and that's the sellability. But either way, they're going to want a business, and your team wants to work with a business that has processes that work, even while you're on vacation. And so understanding across your business, what are your current processes A to Z? What does that look like? Who's involved? And just documenting whether that's flowcharts or the nodes that are included. Understanding that design and the standard operating procedure behind those makes the everyday work so much easier. It's like software development. 80% is the design piece, and that makes the 20%, the development, hands to keyboard, so much easier.
And are there any AI-driven approaches or tools that you use to speed up building these SOPs or implementations for your clients?
Yeah, so I typically recommend the super straightforward one. You had mentioned ChatGPT and Claude. You can just literally start typing. You are an expert in documentation and SOPs that needs to get an intern or an AI agent up and running to do task X. The process A to Z is this, and you just copy and paste what you had documented into this, and just have a conversation with it. And then it could, you can ask it to generate PDFs or docs. I was working with a blue collar business that had really good documentation for their sales team to follow for door-to-door sales. And I sent him a message. I was like, this is world-class documentation. He's like, well, you know why it's world class? Because I used your buddy ChatGPT to be able to generate it. And so, when they're able to generate text and PDF and docs, that's super helpful. And then on the other side, I encourage flowcharts as well. So you can use draw.io to create diagrams.
I use draw.io for diagrams all the time, even with my software developers issue like a workflow or how does code work. I use it. I've hired a new programmer and I was using draw.io a few days ago to explain something to him. Another question I have is, what are some of the most common mistakes you see businesses trying to make when they're scaling operations and without having the right systems in place and automations?
Yeah, I love that. Most commonly is just trying to patch by hiring people without clear systems and processes. Working, before going all in on the business, I'd worked for a Fortune 500 company. And when I was on the shop floor, there was pencil and paper, but they hadn't made an effort to automate and streamline and put the right systems in place that could just 10x the productivity because it wasn't impacting the revenue directly. So there's sort of a blind spot there to be like, oh, it works. If it works, it works. And there's a lot of waste there that in turn could be turned around. So they try to patch with just like more people power versus implementing these systems. And you've heard this before, and I'm sure listeners have as well. You fall to the level of your systems. And so if you have a shaky foundation, when one person leaves or 5 people leave or on vacation, everything can come crashing down to the level of the system. So one example that I give is, there's a food truck that actually last summer I was watching him on social media, and he was overbooking. He was not accounting for traffic, and he was having to manage all these different moving pieces. And he was getting messages from email, from Instagram, Facebook, all these different platforms. And he was overbooked. So he'd have to go on and apologize for missing different showings for his food truck. And that can just really take a toll when the right systems and automations aren't in place to stay on top of that. That can really make a huge impact. And then on the other side of things, there's also, a blue collar business. It's pretty easy to brute force yourself to 20 to 30K, like a plumbing business or an HVAC business, but you're now handling manual outreach, and follow up can fall through the cracks. Projects can fall through the cracks, and that's where if you start missing appointments, leads, and if you don't have systems in place to be able to match that, there is solutions out there, and have hope. There are solutions out there, but in order to take things to that next level, systems is that foundation that we can start with.
Yeah, you definitely need to have a job function, having a system in place before you hire people. You may even find that when you have a good system, you may not need as many people working for the company. Can you share a story where building a custom solution or integrating the right tools had a major impact on a client's growth?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the bigger ones, imagine a large nationwide dealer selling tractors and things along that side. Right now, or before they met me, they had sales reps and a process that the sales rep would have the conversation with the customer, and then they'd have to manually take a look at PDFs and pricing lists through PDFs, shuffle through those, create an Excel sheet for all these different line items, right? And just list them out and sum it together. And it would take hours to try to find these specific listings and prices. So we're creating a solution. We created an MVP this past year for them to take a look, and it actually, they type in to a ChatGPT-like interface for the internal team, and it says, hey, I need a tractor with a XYZ and a light and a radio. And it's actually able to, with that knowledge base and that database of the pricing list trained behind it, it's able to spit out all the line items, automatically sum everything up. And it's creating quotes in seconds rather than hours. And so that's, imagine 10 hours back a week times 4 weeks a month. And then that's across 1,500 reps in the country. And so that is, $1 million value that we're adding there.
Of uploading files, I actually went into ChatGPT. I uploaded a file. I said, can you make this code look better? A process called refactoring. It was able to do it in a matter of seconds. It would have taken me more an hour or two to do on my own, or even hire one of the developers to deal with it. So you can definitely get a lot of efficiency out of the ChatGPT and the AI systems. So today's last question, if someone's listening and their team's still operating on sticky notes, what's the very first step you recommend to building a more scalable system?
Yeah, I love it. It's a great question to land off on. And I would say, if I wanted to be cheeky here, the being aware of the sticky notes and the Slack messages is a great first step. There's a lot of blind spots. Before Henry Ford, people will say they want a faster horse before they knew that the car was a thing. And so, until the car was invented. So I would say, now that you have the sticky notes and the Slack messages, now come up a level and say, okay, what are those processes that they're involved in? And then map A to Z. So I always go back to the A to Z. Where in the process is the sticky notes? And just think about, create diagrams, arrows, and what a process looks like, and just document that. And then you can kind of maybe go to ChatGPT and say, okay, record and document these SOPs. This is a process that I have that I'm ready to hand off to somebody. Or you can sit down and have coffee with me, or in the e-commerce space, you, Joe. And that's the start of your SOP. And now imagine you can then hand that off to, typically you'd hand it off to another employee or an intern, as I always use as the example. But now you have an employee with AI that has a PhD in every single subject, and it's right by their side. And it's super powerful. Sky's the limit.
We'll wrap up today's episode of the Connex Podcast. I want to give a huge thanks to Bryce for joining us and showing us how custom AI solutions and smart automations can help businesses scale without chaos. I like what you said, that having a chat GPT is like having someone with a PhD in every subject by your side. I think we'll definitely save that quote. So to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share that episode with a business owner, ops manager, or developer who's ready to upgrade how their business runs. Thanks a lot, Bryce. See you later.
Thanks. Take care.